Let me tell you about a woman named Sarah. Sarah is 31 years old. She lives in Columbus, Ohio. She makes $55,000 a year, which sounds totally reasonable, right? That's about $4,583 a month before taxes. But every single month, without fail, Sarah hits the last week of the month and she's scraping the bottom of her checking account. She's not buying designer bags. She's not going on fancy vacations. She eats out maybe twice a week. She has a normal apartment, a used car, and a Netflix subscription. Here's what nobody told Sarah, and what nobody told most of us. The problem is almost never how much you're spending. It's that you have no system for where the money goes before it disappears. And the 50-30-20 rule? It's the simplest, most forgiving budgeting system ever created. It doesn't require a spreadsheet with 47 categories. It doesn't require you to track every latte. It just requires you to understand 3 numbers. Today I'm going to break this down using a real $55,000 salary, which, by the way, is almost exactly the median individual income in the United States right now. So if you're anywhere near that number, every single dollar figure I give you today is directly applicable to your actual life. Let's get into it. Most budgets fail. Before we get into the rule itself, I want to talk about why every other budgeting method you've tried has probably failed, because it's not a willpower problem. Here's the thing about traditional budgeting advice. Someone sits you down and tells you to track every single expense. They tell you to have separate categories for groceries, dining out, coffee, entertainment, clothing, personal care, subscriptions, pet food, random Amazon purchases at 2 a.m. You know the ones. And for about 4 days, you do it. You're diligent. You're proud of yourself. You open the app. You log the transactions. You feel like a responsible adult. Then life happens. You forget to log 1 purchase. Then 2. Then the whole system feels broken and contaminated, and you just stop. Sound about right? A 2022 survey by Debt.com found that 80% of Americans say they keep a budget. But of those, only about 33% actually follow through with it consistently. That's a massive gap between intention and action. The reason? Most budgeting systems are too rigid and too complicated for real human psychology. We don't fail at budgets because we're bad with money. We fail because we're given systems designed for robots, not people. The 50-30-20 rule exists precisely to fix that. It's flexible enough to fit real life, simple enough to actually stick to, and structured enough to make real progress. It has exactly 3 categories. That's it. So here's the YS. So here's the rule in 1 sentence. After taxes, 50% of your income goes to needs, 30% goes to wants, and 20% goes to savings and debt payoff. That's it. The whole framework. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds great in theory. But what's a need vis a want? And what if I live in New York City where rent alone takes 60% of my income? We're going to get into all of that. But first, let me give you the big picture of why this ratio works. This rule was actually popularized by Senator Elizabeth Warren. Yes, that Elizabeth Warren. And her daughter Amelia Warren Tyagi in their 2005 book, All You're Worth. Warren was a Harvard bankruptcy law professor at the time, and she spent years studying why middle-class American families kept ending up in financial ruin despite having decent incomes. What she found was fascinating. The families that stayed financially stable across decades weren't necessarily the ones earning the most. They were the ones who had unconsciously or consciously kept their fixed obligations, their non-negotiable monthly expenses, below 50% of their take-home income. That buffer, keeping needs under half your income, created enough breathing room that 1 job loss, 1 medical bill, 1 car breakdown didn't destroy everything. So the 50-30-20 rule isn't some financial influencer's invention. It's backed by decades of bankruptcy research. And for a median American income, it maps almost perfectly onto a realistic budget. Let me show you exactly how. Okay. Let's talk about Sarah again, our 31-year-old from Columbus making $55,000 a year. First, we need to work with take-home pay, not gross salary. After federal taxes, state taxes, and Social Security, someone earning $55,000 in Ohio takes home approximately $42,900 a year. That's roughly $3,575 per month. Write that number down, $3,575. That is the number we are actually working with. Now let's apply the rule. 50% for needs equal sign $1,787 per month, 30% for wants equal sign $1,072 per month, 20% for savings and debt equal sign $715 per month. Now, does that feel tight? Maybe. But let me show you what fits inside each of those buckets. And I think you'll find it's a lot more livable than you expect. Let's build out Sarah's needs category in Columbus, Ohio, which, for reference, has a cost of living about 6% below the national average. So this is actually a realistic American city to model this in. Rent. The average one-bedroom apartment in Columbus runs about $1,050, $1,100 per month. Let's say Sarah pays $1,075. That leaves her $712 for remaining needs. Car payment plus insurance. Sarah drives a used 2019 Honda Civic she financed. Monthly payment is $285. Insurance runs $95. That's $380. Remaining, $332. Groceries. The USDA's moderate food plan for a single adult female in her 30s comes to about $290 per month. Sarah is a decent cook and shops at Aldi occasionally, so she comes in at $260. Remaining, $72. Utilities. Electric, gas, internet. Columbus averages around $130, $150 for these combined. Sarah pays $145. That puts her at negative $73, about $73 over her needs budget. Now, before you panic, this is where people misuse the rule. The 50% isn't a hard ceiling that breaks the system if you go over by $73. It's a target ratio. And there are two ways to fix a slight overage like this. Option 1, trim somewhere. Maybe Sarah keeps her grocery budget tighter at $230 instead of $260. Done. She's back in range. Option 2, she redirects a small slice from wants. Instead of $1,072 for wants, she uses $999. That's still nearly $1,000 a month for things she enjoys. This flexibility is the whole point. The rule bends. It doesn't break. Here's where people get into trouble. They blur the line between needs and wants, and suddenly their needs category is 70% of their income. A need, in the 50-30-20 framework, is anything you cannot reasonably live and work without. Needs include rent or mortgage, utilities, electric, gas, water, basic internet, minimum debt payments, your minimum credit card payment, student loan minimums, car payment, groceries, not DoorDash, actual groceries, health insurance premium, basic transportation costs, gas, public transit, required medications. Here's what does not count as a need, even though it might feel like one. Your Spotify subscription is not a need. It's a want. And that's completely fine. Put it in the wants column. Your gym membership, want. Dining out, even once a week, want. Amazon Prime, want. Though a borderline one if you use it heavily for household items. And here's the big one that trips people up. Upgrading your lifestyle to match your income increase. You got a raise from $45K to $55K. Your needs didn't magically get more expensive. Your rent didn't change. Your car payment didn't change. But if you suddenly need a nicer apartment, a newer car, and weekly restaurant meals, you've lifestyle inflated your needs category and the whole ratio breaks down. The discipline of the 50-30-20 rule isn't in the math. It's in the honest self-assessment of what's actually a need vs, what feels like one. Okay, let's talk about the category everyone forgets to enjoy, wants. For Sarah at $3,575 take-home, her wants budget is $1,072 per month. That is not a small number. That is a genuinely livable, fun money allocation. What goes in wants? Everything that makes life worth living, honestly. Dining out in coffee shops, streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, Max, whatever combination you've got, concerts, movies, events, clothing beyond basic necessities, hobbies, vacations, budgeted monthly as a sinking fund, personal care beyond basics, the nice shampoo, the gel manicure, gifts, subscriptions, that random candle you bought because it smelled incredible. Here's the piece of financial advice. Nobody gives you enough. The wants category exists on purpose. Every budget that works long-term has built-in spending on things you enjoy. Every budget that fails strips out all the fun and then collapses in month 2 when you've been miserable and you blow $400 on a weekend because you felt deprived. The 50-30-20 rule gives you explicit permission to spend $1,072 on things that make your life enjoyable, without guilt, without tracking every dollar, and without feeling like you're cheating on your budget. The only rule for the wants category is, don't go over the allocation. And if you're close to the edge, be honest with yourself about which wants are worth it this month and which ones can wait. Now we hit the category where most people's eyes go wide and they say, there is absolutely no way I'm saving 20% of my income right now. And I hear you. For Sarah, 20% is $715 per month. That might feel enormous. But here's what I need you to understand. The 20% savings category is not just a savings account you're dumping money into. It covers 3 different buckets, and you prioritize them in order. Bucket 1, your emergency fund, if you don't have one. Before anything else, you build a $1,000 emergency fund. $1,000. That's it for now. At $715 a month going towards savings, you hit that in under 2 months. Once you have $1,000 in a separate savings account that you do not touch, you move to bucket 2. Bucket 2, employer 401k match. If your employer matches your 401k contributions, even partially, you contribute enough to capture the full match before you do anything else. This is free money. A 3% match on a $55,000 salary is $1,650 per year your employer is literally giving you for free. Do not leave this on the table. For Sarah, contributing 3% to her 401k is $137.50 per month from her paycheck. Bucket 3, high-interest debt above your minimums. If you have credit card debt at 18, 25% APR, and the average American credit card rate right now is above 20%. Aggressively paying that down belongs in the savings category, not the debt minimum and needs. The extra payments above the minimum go here, because paying off 20% interest debt is a 20% guaranteed return. Sarah, by the way, she implemented this system 4 months ago. She's not saving 20% yet. She's saving 11%. Her needs are at 53%. Her wants are at 36%. But for the first time in 3 years, she knows exactly where her money is going. She has $1,200 in an emergency fund that didn't exist before. And she stopped that sinking feeling at the end of every month. That's what this is really about. Not perfection, progress. If this breakdown helped, you understand where your money should be going, do me a favor and subscribe, because every week on this channel, we do exactly this. Take complicated financial concepts and break them down with real numbers, real examples, and zero judgment. Drop a comment below with your biggest question about the 50-30-20 rule, or tell me what city you're in and what your biggest budget challenge is. I'll see you in the next one.